into reason. Will you open your eyes?
Okay, so we're gonna get to calls, and we're gonna start with an international call. Andy in Dublin.
Andy, you're on
How you
the
doing?
line.
What's up?
How you doing? Okay, fair enough. I hope you're not going to sort of express any amusement at this question. Like, I hope it's not as bad as like the Freemasonry guy last week. But
Well,
I'm just sort of wondering, there's been sort of I saw something in Scientific American there a couple of months ago that actually it said that people with autism or pervasive developmental disorders are less likely to believe fantastic claims. Now, like, I'm not actually saying that's a bad thing. I myself have a pervasive developmental disorder, and I'm just sort of wondering, like, has there been? Would you actually notice any sort of significant increase in that sort of end of the free thinking and the atheist community?
so I saw your message on the call screen, so I did look and check that this was a legitimate study that had come out pretty recently. And, you know, I don't know. I mean, you know, I could throw out anecdotal evidence that I'm not autistic, and neither are any of my friends. That wouldn't contradict what the study actually says. You know, I can't really. I mean, I don't want to go making stuff up. I mean, it is one of the things that went through my mind while I was thinking about your question is. There's no evidence for the existence of God, and one of the main and sometimes atheists accuse theists of being crazy, and I always say no, they're not crazy, because even though the arguments would sound crazy if you looked at them in a vacuum, there's a strong element of social pressure to believe what everybody else believes. Now, if you're autistic, you could tend to be sort of more immune to the effects of social pressure, which means that one of the reasons that people maintain a belief in God is not there. But I mean, that's just a guess. I'm not a scientist. I haven't read that much about this study.
Yeah. No, well, one thing I will actually add is sort of a lot of famous free thinkers through history. That actually it hasn't been proven with concrete evidence. Like, a lot of free thinkers in history are believed to have been either autistic or on the autistic spectrum. Like, for instance, a lot of psychiatrists believe that Thomas Jefferson had Asperger's syndrome. The same with Albert Einstein and the
I've heard Alan Turing
computer
too.
science. Alan Turing. I was just getting to him. And, you know, these were people who actually, they weren't very susceptible to believing fantastic claims or even making fantastic claims. Like, they were actually sort of very calm and resolute people. And actually, the one thing I will say about Einstein is that, you know, he said it's not that I'm smarter, I just stay with problems a lot longer. So I'm just sort of wondering, is like, could that be sort of maybe a thing about like people that actually have like autism, they don't tend to be intellectually lazy, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, possibly. I mean,
It's possible. I
don't want to get too far into speculating. I would just also say that, you know, if you're sort of committed to being out as an atheist, then you have to be willing to accept some amount of being a pariah in a lot of cultures. And if you're autistic, that's probably easier. But I don't know. That's all I have to say about that, I guess.
All right, fair enough. I'm actually just I just have one final question. I promise I won't take too long. This might seem a bit more relevant to you guys, but it's just something that actually that's just sort of been in the back of my mind for a while. Like a lot of the claims made in the Bible, like, they actually sort of they appeal to anthropomorphism, like the description of heaven in the Book of Revelation describes it as having a number of thrones and God being surrounded by all these weird animals, like, and that would suggest that heaven has gravity and it has some sort of place. It's a habitable place for these weird animals. Like, I'm just sort of wondering, like, I think at that point, like, I kind of knew a lot of claims in the Bible were fake. I'm just sort of wondering, like why would sort of people generally sort of believe these claims, and you can just sort of see that they're just really obviously fake?
Well, I think part of the appeal of the Bible is the storytelling and narrative aspect of it, and that people can identify with the stories, and they can be caught up with the stories and these sorts of things, and maybe that captivates people, and they don't necessarily worry so much about truth. I think that proper science is only a couple hundred years old, and I think before that, people may not have had a good, strong basis on which to worry about truth and false claims. And maybe it was just the stories that were compelling and interesting that stuck with people and influenced their lives. I think our fascination with truth is relatively new as far as evolutionary terms.
Yeah, and don't forget, a lot of people don't even read the Bible. I mean, they talk about what a great book it is, but they sit in church and people tell them the nice parts that are in the Bible, or they spin this longer, more bizarre story out of it that seems relevant to a modern audience, like the Left Behind books, in the case of Revelation.
Of course.
Okay, well, thanks for your call.
Thank you very much. That's been most interesting.
All right.
Thanks.
See ya.